So there's nothing wrong with thinking, right? But it's when we're stuck in the thought and there's no awareness of it. There's so many factors, like even like the thought of time, like time, I've got to get here a certain time and do this. And there's this attachment. That's a big one. We've talked about that a bunch, Jess, of attachments to things, to people, to timing. And I know that's connected to Yogi Triathlete as well, How do we watch these thoughts that can get so attached of like a time on a run or a bike ride? And for me personally, it's been in meditation, of course, with my eyes closed, no other stimulus coming in. And it's me and whatever arises in my experience. And many times it's thoughts.
Almost always it's thoughts.
Oh, yes, almost always.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Yogi Triathlete Podcast. We are Jess and BJ, and we're on a mission to create a better world, the very one that exists right now within you and within me. The change that we all dream to see in the world begins in this moment, in each moment moving forward. It's in our response to the world, it's in the power of surrender, and it's in the seeking of truth. But in order to fully be aligned with our truth, our power, and our freedom to respond, we first must be aware. Aware of how we move through the world, aware of when we are in the fight, aware of when we're in the bliss, and those lonely times when we find ourselves living under the guise of the ego. I could go on and on about the simple yet profound chain of events that lead to a better world, but all we need to know for now is that this moment is all we have. I'm certain that our guest today will agree, as meditation and mindfulness is her way of life. Meghan Leighton is a yoga instructor, certified mindfulness educator, retreat leader, and student of Ayurveda. She has spent the last several years working in school systems throughout Massachusetts and Rhode Island, implementing groundbreaking mindfulness programs for children. She's a part of our Costa Rica trio and the reason why our Costa Rica retreat exists. Meg's journey began 20 years ago when she started practicing meditation with absolutely no idea of the impact it would have on her life. As the benefits and shifts showed up, Meg's enthusiasm for the practice grew immensely, leading her to her purpose of sharing the teachings of yoga and meditation to others. I have a feeling we're going deep in this episode, so everybody needs to just slow down and take it in. You'll hear in Meg's voice, she is so present and so patient, and those are two qualities that if that's all you take away from today, start practicing those right now. But I do hope you take away a cavern of knowledge to share with your community and the world. Meg, my dear friend, welcome to the show.
What an honor to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, I thought about having you on the show for a while, right? And it just like the timing felt good. And so I always love to see what that timing brings, right? Like what this conversation will bring. And the three of us, what is unique with the three of us, which is unique between our Costa Rica trio, me, you, and Valerie, is that we have all been trained in yoga under the same teachers, and we all work with meditator Bob. Which that could be fun to talk about.
Yes.
Your experience with meditator Bob.
I was wondering if Bob was going to come up.
Oh, yeah, he's already here.
Yes.
Making his way into the No, that's so not him. So not him. Yeah, whoa, take me off the big screen. Don't put me in it with all that energy. So, I love your story because I feel like you're a modern day Yogananda. Like you were in search of a guru. Like you were in search of a guru. So why don't you take us through your story? You've been meditating for a long time. And how did you even get there to start meditating?
Sure. Yeah. Eckhart Tolle was one of the first people who introduced me to the power of now. I would listen to his CDs. I read his book, The Power of Now, Stillness Speaks. And he spoke a lot, of course, about presence. And my question was, okay, well, how? Because I felt I kept watching my mind. I'm a teenager, back in college, late high school, and I'm like, I want to get control of my mind. Like that was a question I remember having. And I found, I think it was Gateways to Presence from Eckhart Tolle, and I started using his meditations. Before that, when I was in college, I was also introduced to Thich Nhat Hanh and his meditations, mindful eating, mindful walking, in a world religions course that I took at URI with Art Stein, who was amazing, the professor. I will never forget him. And I was blown away. And I remember it was the first time in my life where I read an article written by Thich Nhat Hanh on the power of now. And it was the first time for about 7 seconds, it was like clear mind. Like it felt like pure presence. And then all of a sudden my intellect started labeling it or judge that. My ego is like, what is this? That was amazing. Oh my gosh, I want more. I want to learn more. Like, and I, continued to read his article and to study many of the different wisdom traditions. But later on, years later, I was reading all of these texts and listening to all these different teachers, and I noticed a ton of confusion of just like, I want to meditate, but my mind is trying to figure this out. I'm feeling peace, but I thought I was my thoughts. Like I noticed a real identification with my thoughts. And it was kind of scary to take a step back to be like, wait a minute, I'm not my thoughts. And so it took time, and it actually took me a few years to read The Power of Now, for that reason, because I noticed this nervousness of like, what is this? And eventually, Jess, I, for a year or two, was praying for a guru. Like, I just had these questions. What is all this about? And Newport Power Yoga, I worked the desk, and you were talking about Bob. And something clicked. You had talked about him 3 or 4 times, just here and there, just different blurbs. I think you had just met with him each day, and it was fresh on your mind. And eventually it just hit me like, it's time to reach out to him. It's time. And I was already familiar with Paramahansa Yogananda, and I was really looking for someone to guide me with those Kriya Yoga techniques in particular. Because I read Autobiography of a Yogi, I was chanting Paramahansa Yogananda's chants. So I was looking for someone who was attuned to that, and he was.
Yeah. I mean, that whole lineage of teaching is what we are taught, right? Yogananda, yes, and his teacher, all the way to Jesus, yes, who, correct me if I'm wrong, I always say that Jesus was a yogi. He studied meditation, and whatever interpretation people have of him, it doesn't really matter. I feel like the labels or the way that we categorize somebody like Jesus, it's whatever feels comfortable for us so that we can open to those teachings of love, right? So yes, my intent by saying that he was a yogi, that he studied meditation, which is truth, that he was in India and he studied, and we learned this from our meditation teacher. That's what resonates with me, is those teachings, and that teaching of love, which is essentially what his teaching was showing us how to love and to forgive. Yes. Yeah. He was the pointer, and within, the kingdom of heaven within, or presence, or whatever word we want to use, love. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, interesting is that even came up in our yoga teacher training, because Philip would talk about, Philip, our yoga mentor, is very passionate, and he would be like, even as they're pounding nails into your hand, you can forgive. Yeah. You can be at peace. And that's, I think, what meditation teaches us, that we can be at peace no matter what. Yes. Yeah. Challenges, joys, like you mentioned in the beginning. Amidst it all, how can we find that unwavering presence behind watching all of the changes, the ups and downs? And it takes practice. It takes practice with a mind that has been, for many people,
ingrained and conditioned for fear, for distractions, and it's easy to get lost in all of that.
As your curiosity grew into awareness of thoughts, because Power of Now has no, I mean, you can't help but notice that you're not your thoughts. Like, I think it's in like the first few, pages. It's like you're not your thoughts. Those around you, your community, your close friends, family, did you have like an awakening that maybe, or how did that process go? Basically, like, were they like, "What are you talking about?" Or did you not even share any of that stuff with any of your family and friends as you were learning this?
Yeah, I feel grateful and blessed to have had a mom who I was able to talk to about all of these different spiritual things, which both of you know my mom, Carol. And so she was a force on my journey and continued journey, still is a force and presence of on this journey of like waking up to who we really are. And so I would share things with her all the time. I mean, we would talk about spirituality every day. And I'm also my friend Kristen, she introduced me to, she was like, Meg, you gotta watch Oprah and Eckhart. You gotta watch this. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? And she told me first. I taught with her at an elementary school. And so I was able to talk to her about it as well. But anybody else, I didn't have a lot of other people to talk with.
What about now?
Now, oh gosh, after taking the yoga teacher training, and I feel like I've got such a community and friends who are on the same path, who I can talk to about any of this, both of you included, Val, my friend Amanda, and other yogis from Newburyport here at the studio, and my sister, my mom, and my dad. My dad has become very open to all of this too. And that's been cool to have those conversations. I remember I took the 12-day training, the last one with Philip and Renee about almost 2 years ago. My mom was away and I stayed at my parents' house because I was down in Rhode Island, and it was just my dad and I there. And so I'd come home from the training and we would have these profound conversations every night. Conversations I had never had in my life about spirituality and like, are we, all of this, are we our thoughts? How do we break through this identification of like my role? And just, it was really cool.
Yeah. My God, there's so many places I want to go, but I'm going to go to this place about the thoughts. How do you articulate to people that they're not their thoughts? Because like you, I was like, not only was I like, what? I'm not my thoughts, but like, how dare you tell me I'm not my thoughts? And I would get defensive about that because there was things that I thought that I liked that, gave me good qualities that, not seeing that who I was separate from all of that labeling, I guess you could say, or that thought life. So how do you articulate that to people?
One of the clear ways is through metaphor. And for me, especially when I hear that my thoughts are like clouds and I'm the awareness, I'm the sky watching the thoughts as they pass through. Or, awareness is like a stream or river flowing and the thoughts are like a leaf kind of passing by. So there's nothing wrong with thinking, right? Mm-hmm. But it's when we're stuck in the thought and there's no awareness of it. And, even there's so many factors, like even like the thought of time, like time, I've got to get here a certain time and do this. And, and there's this attachment, that's a big one. We've talked about that a bunch, Jess, of attachments to things, to people, to timing. And I know that's connected to Yogi Triathlete as well, How do we watch these thoughts that can get so attached of like a time on a run or a bike ride? And for me personally, it's been in meditation, of course, with my eyes closed, no other stimulus coming in. And it's me and whatever arises in my experience. And many times it's thoughts.
Almost always it's thoughts.
Yes, almost always.
Yeah.
So that's where that's where the rubber meets the road. When we, a lot of the people we work with, they're like, but I can't stop my thoughts. I can't, I keep, every time I sit quietly, it doesn't work. My thoughts jump in and they pull my attention away. And so we like to articulate it as every time that happens, you just pull yourself back to the moment through a mantra, through your breathing, through counting, through something that's happening now. But still the next day will come up and it's like, well, my thoughts took over again. I did not, and they judge it. I didn't have a good meditation. It wasn't a good meditation.
Yes.
Yeah. So how does that cycle get broken, or how, I know the answer, but how do you break that cycle?
Yeah. To stay with it. Of course, it's uncomfortable. It's not always comfortable sitting in meditation. It's not always comfortable living this life we live as human beings, right? And it's bringing, as you said, this kind awareness. Kind for me is like patience, of like, oh, this is here again, the same thought, and just connected to neuroscience. Scientists that study thoughts say, okay, 3 things. They're repetitive, they're negative, and they're useless. Like most of the time, those, and it's like, okay, and I do want to say, thoughts can support us, of course, for planning. It's not saying, okay, we can't plan for a time, we can't set a goal. Of course we can, but it's what is our relationship to the goal or the thoughts? Is it, I need this in order to be happy? Or can I hold it and watch it and say, oh, okay, here's the thought again. It's not me. It's a cloud passing through, and I welcome it, actually. Because the problem, I don't want to say problem, challenge is that I hear this quite a bit with people I work with in meditation, where it's like, I had a horrible meditation, I can't do it, and I can't get rid of my thoughts. But that resistance, actually, what we resist persists. So if we could open up to it and welcome, it will naturally take its course, and then it might come up again, and that's okay. Can I open up and allow this again?
What's the quality that's under an ability to open up? Like, what do we need to do to open?
Yeah. The first thing that comes up for me is equanimity and patience.
So somebody says, I am hella far away from being, experiencing equanimity and patience. I'm not patient. I'm not patient. I'm not a patient person, right? So somebody who identifies as that, but they're like, but I want to meditate.
Yes.
And you're saying whereas equanimity and patience, how do they begin? And again, it's an identification with a label, because I used to pride myself on being impatient, because I thought if I was impatient enough, nobody would get in my way. They wouldn't interrupt me and I could stay on task. What?
Yeah.
I'm thinking
True.
of, but I'm remembering high school years. I read the paper, what a dork. I'm reading the paper and choking down coffee because I thought I was something that I needed to be something other than I was. And I remember my mother would be like, good morning. I'd be like, oh, that would just, oh, now I have to pull my eyes away from this sentence. And now I'm going to be off schedule. And so I used to identify as that. And now I'm somebody who I can just sit in that space and talk to the ego and be like, hey, I can do this all day long. I can bounce from thought to presence as long as you want it, as long as you need me to do this, I'm okay.
Yeah. Yes.
But somebody who comes to you like that, how do you begin to, not that they have to get rid of those labels because it will all happen on its own, but how do you get them started?
Yeah. Yeah. I think first offering, it depends. The neuroscience, right? There's a ton of, okay, what are the benefits? What are all of these people, millions of people now practicing meditation? and many of whom have struggled as well. Like, you're not alone in this. I also struggle sometimes in my own meditations, and it's, so bringing some normalcy or normalizing it a bit. And then when you notice those thoughts of impatience or resistance, come back to the breath. Notice it and come back to the good. Or it's body awareness, because the big thing is that we have a choice, right, in our meditation. Sometimes it's like, okay, focus on the breath, keep focusing, but it's like that also then can become rigid. Like, so, and it depends. Everyone that I work with is different in kind of how to gear them more onto a clear path and like sort of healthy relationship with their meditation practice. Yeah, I don't know. Did I answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it with, when it's the awareness, right? I was talking about that in the intro. It's when you become aware of it, that's really where our freedom is. Like, when you become aware of it, something that you don't desire anymore. But there's going to be that part of you that says, no, but being an impatient equals being productive equals being this, being that, right? So there's an identification there. But if somebody says, hey, I've got all this neuroscience here that says this is going to actually drive me into a better direction, and then we get the intellect on board, and the decision is made that I'm going to start meditating. And I think how you described it is perfect. Like, when we notice we're in that fight, when we notice we're in that identification as something that no longer serves us, that we can pull our awareness away from that and onto something else. Breath, body, something that's happening now. Yes.
Yes, completely. And, just going back to attachments, and also that, okay, when we meditate in the beginning, it's like, okay, a minute. For me, it was hard just to sit for 1 minute, and then all of a sudden it got kind of easy. Maybe a couple weeks went by and I was, all right, I want to go to that space, that edge for the minds where it gets a little more challenging. So I'm going to extend it to 5, 10, 20, and just gradually, but it's got to be, our mantra every day over a little bit every day over a long period of time. Right?
Oh, yeah. The listeners have never heard that.
Yeah.
They've never heard that before. They've never heard that from us. Never on this show.
I've got your tank with it. I love those tanks.
That's right. You do.
Yes. I wear it at least once a week.
Perfect. All right. Get that message out there. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a little bit every day.
But the athlete's mind, and this is, very committed, very dedicated, they think more is better. So I'm going to start my meditation practice. I'm going to do, 30 minutes a day. And they start off, and of course, success, right? Success at the beginning, right? 30 minutes every day. And then that day happens where 30 minutes doesn't happen. And the negotiation steps in. And it's not a negotiation as far as like, I'm going to do 5 minutes today or 10 minutes. It's going to be like, I'm not doing anything today. I'll start again tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, and now momentum is actually moving in the other direction. And now that's 2 days that you skip, and then it keeps moving and moving. Then Monday happens, right? Monday, let's start again.
The sacred Monday.
Monday, or the first of the month, or the first of the year. I'm going to start 30
January
minutes again.
1st.
Let's just bag it.
And I'm not going to do 30 minutes January 1st. I'm going to do 60 minutes starting January 1st.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So can you see this?
Big expectations.
Yeah. So how do we reel it back? How do you get back to like, how come 1 minute's enough? How comes 5 minutes is enough?
Yeah, and I think having someone where you can talk to about these, whether it's a teacher like each of you, and mindset coaches where you can touch base every week or every other week, or friends, just like checking in if listeners have a friend who also meditates, just like checking in, like, hey, I'm going to set a goal I'm going to start back up tomorrow, 30 minutes. I'll text you later on tomorrow and let you know that I did it, just to hold each other accountable. Of course, Bob, I feel it's been so helpful to have him in my life as someone I feel accountable to. I feel it's a commitment to myself, to my own spiritual growth, and also to him and the energy and work that he's put in our sessions.
Yeah, he's no joke. Like, he is nobody that you want to waste his time.
No. Nope.
Not at all. All right, let's talk a little bit about that experience. So, you just told the story that you actually had heard about we call him Meditator Bob. I don't know why, but we've called him Meditator Bob for a while.
That's how he's in my phone.
He's in my phone as
Yeah.
He's in my journal as MB. MB said this. But that was recent. I think it was actually when we were in Costa Rica that you told me that story. I never knew that you heard of him through my yoga classes, which is just, I just love how messaging gets to us.
Yes.
I don't take credit for it. I was just the messenger for that. But what was your experience like? Like when you walked in, you had been praying for a guru. Did you know it was him? Like, what was that like? Because you didn't see him in person, did you? It was always remote.
Yes.
Okay.
It was always on Zoom.
Yep.
And you and I would chat before class when I would register people beforehand. And you would talk about Bob sometimes, and Valerie was there. And then I ended up asking, can I have his number? Could I text him and just see? So the first time was on Zoom. And he, of course, went through what he offers, his background and experience. And as soon as he started talking about Kriya Yoga or Paramahansa Yogananda, I was like, okay, there's something here. Yeah, and we just right off the bat had a connection. I felt like I could trust him.
Yeah.
Even just from the first hour.
Has he ever said anything to you like he knew you were coming or anything like that? Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
That you.
He did. He actually said, I was waiting, something like it's been 9 years and coming. It was almost like, I don't know, I just didn't listen to the call or something for 9 years, then finally.
You're like, decline call. You're like, I'll pick it up.
Screen call, what?
Here's your guru. Decline. That's interesting. Yeah, because I saw him in person when I walked in, he literally looked at me. I went to a group meditation, I went to some group meditations back in end of 2010. And when I walked in, I just remember him looking at me from across the room and saying something like, I've been waiting for you.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, geez, what the hell? And literally sat in the circle and I was like, how long is this meditation going to be? These people look legit.
Can I watch?
And I was like, okay, back to 8th grade when I would just hate my civics class and I would just count to 60 times. That's what I did. But what I didn't realize I was doing was that was like a mantra.
Yes.
Right? I was just counting because I was like, holy crap, I got to save face here. These guys know what they're doing, It was like a whole group of people. I didn't know how long we were going to be there, and that drove my mind crazy. Mm-hmm. It might even have been 90 minutes. It was long. But I was like, yeah, I'll go to this group thing. Why not? I got nothing going on Saturday morning.
90 minutes later, you're like, what did I get into?
Oh my God, I think my leg is broken.
Holy cow. That's another thing, Jess, in terms of people meditate and then come off. Meditating with other people, especially in the beginning, is helpful, to strengthen that awareness and concentration with other people, because that's the foundation for meditation.
Yeah. What do you think that your experience with working with Meditator Bob, what has that opened you to?
Oh my gosh. This is a greater experiences of joy and wholeness that I've ever experienced in him pointing, because of course all of our teachers are the pointer. They're not the actual goal. The goal is within us. And so, and there was some time in the beginning where I was like, I'd show up late to class. It's like, I don't know if I can meet today, Bob, and then it was almost like I wonder if I was avoiding it or something. And then a couple years in, I was like, whoa, I started to notice some real changes and started to take it more seriously because of these shifts. And it was around understanding the energetic aspects, the spiritual aspects of that I am not just this body, that I, of course, am not these thoughts. And then learning about the deeper teachings of Jesus and how they related to our higher mind, really, in essence, like living our life connected to source or our higher self. And when I read, because I would go to church every Sunday, like especially through my teens, through college, after, and I was also, and then I started also meeting with Bob, and then understanding and experiencing the deeper aspects of Jesus' teachings. And I could go into that here, but that's pretty deep. One of them in particular.
Let's go.
Buckle up.
Yeah, like, for example, when Nicodemus meets with Jesus and asks him, when Jesus says we have to be born again. And Nicodemus is like, what do you mean? How can I be more born of a mother again? And he said, no, of the spirit, of the higher self, of the higher mind, but it's in meditation. It's clearing the obstacles, right? That's what yoga is. We're clearing the obstacles out. It's always here. It's always inside of us, that connection to source, love, light, peace, calm. But there are obstacles that get in the way of that experience. And so Bob has trained me through pranayama, breathwork techniques, which breath, of course, is connected to prana, life force energy, and it's also connected to thoughts. So when we change our pattern of breathing, we can also change our thoughts and support a more calm mind. Along with...
Did Bella just fall off the bed?
I know. I think she got up and hit the guitar case accidentally.
Play guitar.
She's okay. She's okay. She's now laying on the couch.
Yeah, she's representing the ego here, saying, you've gone a little too deep in this episode. We got to pull it back. We got to start talking about paces and, the real important stuff like heart rate data. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
No, keep going.
Yeah, keep going. This is good.
Yeah.
Along with Ayurveda, him and Dottie knows quite a bit about Ayurveda and the science of life and looking at how can we match our own routines with that of the earth and the rhythms of the earth and the sun. To me, that was yeah, okay, I want to do that. Why wouldn't I? I'm a part of nature. I'm a part of the earth as well. And if I can sync up my own routine, and as I have, I feel the best I've ever felt in my life. I feel more energy, clarity, physically, mentally. I just feel my optimal self. And so much is attributed to Bob and his teachings.
Yeah. Tell me about your study of Ayurveda. What is Ayurveda? Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah, Ayurveda, so when you break it down, the science of life, and it looks at the elements, fire, water, earth, air, ether. And all of these elements are inside all of us. But we each have a dosha or constitution, which is more like an imbalance. So for example, I'm earth and water, so it's pretty sticky, like mud, can be heavy. That's my prominent. I'm also pitta or fire. So I'm both of those, which I have to watch in particular. So for example, heavy foods coming in, like bread, sweets, which of course I love, it's like, ooh, will really slow me down. And it's easier to gain weight, where someone who might have a vata constitution, which is air, ether, they might not gain weight as easily as a kapha like me. So it's things like that. Also particular foods, because of course food also has energy. It's this subtle energy that can impact our own body, mind, spirit. And how can I eat based on my kapha dosha, so that I feel more aligned. I feel vitality, rather than lethargy. Because I was a big, growing up pizza eater. I really didn't have a ton of discipline. French fry, all of that was like kapha, and I was overweight for most of my early life. It wasn't until I started to understand these tools that I found some real eye-opening information and higher ways of living.
Speak to a bit about the fire constitution. I think about our athletes that, there's always inflammation going on either after a workout or something that's chronic happening in the body. And that fire element, if we're eating, foods that increase that fire element, what kind of effect would that have on inflammation or recovery?
Yeah. Inflammation is heat, and if we have a diet that is filled with spicy foods, even hot temperature foods, alcohol, coffee, and caffeine coming in, all of these are pitta dominant. So if that's coming into the system, it's going to create more inflammation and more fire. So and if someone is a pitta dosha or fire, then also they could feel more angry. That's also emotion shows up as heat in the body. So they're more likely to be sensitive to, or the news, or road rage or whatever, more likely, where it's like, my husband is pitta. So Asa, he's fire, and he goes to an Ayurvedic doctor. We have these conversations, and he's read books and things, but so he really has been watching in terms of really clean, like salads, lighter meals, lots of water, just watching the coffee intake, and things like that.
Yep, that's what the fire has to do. And your fire earth, right? And yes. I was working with somebody who similar. It was vata pitta, so it was the air and the ether and then the fire, which has got to be a very aggravating combination because the vata drives the pitta crazy. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about the numbers, so you guys, you take these quizzes." And it will tell you what your primary dosha is. And so we'll link one up in the show notes for people that they can take and they can find out what their dosha is. And he said, don't worry what the numbers are with that vata pitta. Pitta will always win. Always win.
Yes.
It will always take, even if, so let's say the number was 15 vata and 12 pitta. He said that pitta, that fire, if not watched, will always rage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
So
it overrides it.
Do you feel that with your earth fire combo?
Yeah, I definitely, last time I went to, not the last time, I would say, maybe 3 times ago. It was the first time in person I met with her, so it was actually years ago, but I met with an Ayurvedic doctor, and she said, your pitta is off, your fire's off. And so she had me change some foods. I also took herbs, and then I went back and checked in with her. So it is advanced. I mean, there's so much to learn. And I'm, of course, not a doctor or an expert, but I've been studying it for 4 or 5 years and going to a doctor, Ayurvedic doctor, and just getting a sense of, okay, you know what, a little bit each day. For example, things like just ice and water, which I learned, which I'm like, what? Because I really do love water with ice. On hot days, it's but it creates toxins or agni in the body. And it's really not that great. And, I thought about it, I'm like, when I traveled to Europe, and even when you go to India and all the other places in Asia, it's they don't put ice in drinks. For some, whatever, we do here, and that's fine. But it's I don't think a lot of people know that, hey, actually it can create imbalance.
Yeah, it can. The ice, that was one thing that I woke up to too, is I started to eat more for my dosha, the fire dosha, which is the ice will actually, it traps the heat. You would think that, the colder the drink, the better, because that will cool the fire. But it actually will trap the heat in and it will aggravate it. Yeah.
Yes.
I need some of that fire.
Yeah. Do you have any kaffa questions?
I know that I need coffee and I need my peanut butter and bananas. Like, I need that.
Yes.
No, I don't need it. But yeah, I need a little to get me going. But I guess it's curious because you could look at that at some things, I guess, what you're passionate about or what you're aligned with. Some things become so natural. Like to get up and get out and get on a workout is no problem for me. Like no problem. So easy. But that's something I've created a habit around, right?
It's become a habit.
It's become a habit. So the very way I can create a habit that says I must have peanut butter in the morning, right? Like I must have it. Like that's how I get things going. Is it true or not? I don't know. Like it is right now because I created that belief. And so to circle back to what we believe, right? Our thoughts, like we can convince ourselves of anything we want.
Yes.
And what we crave isn't necessarily good for us. So like I crave salt. Salt's not that great for fire. It's terrible, actually. I've got my Ayurvedic book right here, and I'm going to look up. Well, Meg, you might know. What about peanuts or peanut butter for kapha? That feels heavy to me.
Yeah, it's not
Not
I
good.
don't believe it's recommended, nor almond butter, because Ace has gone off of all of that. He is doing cashew butter, though. I think she said that was
Cashew.
okay. But one other thing, too, that I wanted to mention, which I appreciate in Ayurveda, is that 80% of the time, eat based on your dosha, routine. And then you've got that 20%. So maybe it is one day where it's some almond butter or whatever it is that comes in, and then but then it's having that discipline then the next day, right, to go back on and say, okay, now I'm going to get back into my routine again.
Yes, and some people looping it back to athletes too, because I like to pull that in. It's like all or nothing. It's like, no, I don't even want to have that one day, because if I have that one day, then I don't have the self-regulation to get back on the train. So I'd rather not even bring it in to the house, like just deprive myself of it. And that causes a whole nother set of feelings or urges that say once you can't have something, you pretty much want to get it. You want it.
Yes. What we resist persists.
Right. Well, that's self-regulation. I think it's really like a denial of how powerful we are, right? It's a lack of recognizing that we actually are really powerful to make a choice to, live in a way that supports our constitution, supports our desires, our dreams. We are also as powerful to make the choice to live in the opposite direction of those things. So to say, well, I'm not going to have chips for 45 days. Well, what happens on day 46? It's like your feet are sticking out of a bag of Ruffles. That deprivation doesn't work. I don't think. What do you think about deprivation, or like I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes for 30 days? And what have you seen with things like that? Kind of this, like BJ said, the all or nothing.
Sure. Those extremes, and I'll just talk personally, don't last. It doesn't work. Like it's where it's like, I'm going to go, and I used to do this. I'm going to cleanse for 2 weeks. And yeah, it would feel good. And then I go right back to eating junk. Well, not junk, but not great, And then it's like, okay, so what is all this for? Like, what is this for? And one thing also that came up when you said that was that Ayurveda, what I love about it is that it's a lifestyle. It's not a diet. It's a lifestyle choice of choosing the times I wake up to meditate or wake up in the morning, to when I exercise, to the foods that I eat.
Yeah. And not setting, another thing that we can see, and we see this a lot with athletes too. I mean, think about it. Training for an Ironman triathlon is no joke. You got to swim, you got to bike, you got to run, you got to recover, you got to fuel, you got to prep your meal, and then if you have a family or children or a spouse or a partner, a job that, pays for it, a car that needs an oil change, sometimes it can feel like a lot. So as far as like from this medicine of Ayurveda, how do we work with that, like a full life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you've got, like you said, a family and you're, exercise regimen and work and little bits. So it might be connected to Ayurveda. Just take ice out of the water, just for the next few weeks, and just see what happens then. And then all of a sudden, take one food to avoid that's on the list to avoid. See if you could take that out for a few weeks. Just gradual, because it's so important to take one and go slow and steady. Because if we're like, all right, I'm taking 10 on this week, and it's like, it's just not going to happen, You kids and all this, and now I got to shop different, and it's like, that doesn't work,
Yeah, because it's interesting you say, like, take the ice out of the water. Like, how would ice out of the water help me not feel overwhelmed? Because the overwhelm is what is the overwhelm? What would be the quality
of the lack of power over the ice has power. You're basically saying I can't use ice. I should feel better.
No, that they're overwhelmed in their life. Like they've got no time. I've got no time. Now you're telling me I need to meditate. And a lot of that overwhelm is in the mind. But also we don't want to set ourselves up for a stressful life, right? But there are the basics. Children, if you want to do an Ironman, you got to train, like spouse, partner, whatever, friends. But something as simple as taking the ice out of the water is going to help to balance those qualities within you, which actually will help you move through a full day more balanced. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
I would say, well, back to the power. It's taking your power back, meaning that you don't need the ice in the water to drink. Like you always have that belief that I need cold water, like always ice. Well, now you've become sort of like, that has power over you. You need the ice in order to drink the water. But now if you can choose and say, I don't need the ice, like it's supposedly it's better for me, like for my dosha, I shouldn't have any. Now you've actually chosen not to have it. So haven't you taken back a little bit of confidence and power and belief that you can get yourself to where you want to go?
Yeah, totally. And there are also alternatives. It's like maybe you start to put cucumber in your water. Like something really delicious, like a couple slices of fruit or something. Of course, I loved pasta, and wheat is not good for my dosha. And so I get black bean pasta, protein pasta, and I can eat that. So it's looking for alternatives as well.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the work you did in schools. Maybe it's you worked a bit with Inward Bound. I just remember this story you told me, which was so cool. I think we were talking about deprivation. I think we were talking about like maybe a habit that's not great and how do we move through that. And you were telling me about this really cool thing where there were teens that would smoke. And you guys would like, tell us that story.
Yeah. So I've been on, maybe 7 or 8 teen retreats. And they take place with Inward Bound Mindfulness and Education. They take place now online, but pre-COVID, they were all over the country. I went to the one in California and then here in Massachusetts. And we would have 40 to 50 teens from all over the country who would practice mindfulness. So we would wake up in the morning in silence and go right into some movement and meditation, walking meditation in the morning. But really I had never experienced anything so authentic, like the staff that I worked with and how they could hold space, and even the teens, like there's this flowering of getting to know their personalities and how comfortable they would be by the end of their retreat. And it's just in the way that IBME has structured each day. And because it's silence in the first part of the day, but then the second part is workshop. So there is time to talk and connect. And then of course we have a dance party on one of the last nights. And some of the workshops are like dance workshops, but and some of the teens would smoke, they were smokers, and we would say, that's okay. That's okay if you're going to smoke. A mentor or staff would go out and be with them, but would guide them with mindfulness of smoking to see if really taste it. Like taste it. What is it? How does it feel when you're blowing it out? What is it? And so just building some inquiry about it. So it's not like this is wrong and nothing. That's what I love about this practice, right? It's like we're not fixing anything. We're just opening up and accepting, ourselves. And then in this moment or that experience, it was with the teens, just as they are. And then asking some questions and guiding them to their own experience.
So
it was really powerful.
I know. I just love that. And it reminds me of the story that you recently talked about when you and Val and I were on the phone about in the documentary Awake. And one of Yogananda's students said to him, well, I like to go to Vegas and I like to drink and I like women. And like, what do I do about that? Because I'm meditating now. And Yogananda was like, it's fine. Keep meditating. And what you will find is that those less desirable habits will fall away.
Yes.
So somebody that says like, I drink too much beer, or, I hear that a lot. Like, I drink too much beer, or I shouldn't eat this, or I shouldn't do that. Or how do you guide somebody like that who's kind of like, they're in this, like, it's clear that they don't want to do it, but it's clear that there's a part of them that still enjoys it. But they're kind of measuring themselves up saying, well, this isn't what another person does, so this is probably bad. How do you guide them?
Yeah, because, it's tricky because it's like even socially, right? You have that connection of you're out with friends, you grab a meal and then everybody else is drinking, but I don't want to drink. What do I do? Or at home or something if you have people over. And the first thing that comes up for me is like alternatives. And I can just like Asa actually, because of course, with his pitta dosha, that fire is not good, as I mentioned earlier. And he found his Athletic Brewing Company. It's a beer, and there's and it's so tasty. So, on the weekend, he'll have one of those instead. And I've tried one as well, and I think they're really good. So the first thing is like, looking at alternatives that you enjoy. And I just going back to Yogananda's words, just like keep going to the practice, like keep meditating, keep going within, because then things just will start to fall away. Seek first your higher mind, that's always there, that calm, and then everything else will come onto you. Everything else will start. And it's easier said than done, of course. But just from my own experience, I've noticed it for myself. It's like and I know it's from meditation, where I've made that commitment of every morning and every afternoon I meditate, and this has been for years. And slowly, things have fallen away in my life, and it just naturally happened. I was a big drinker for sure in college and even post-college. And I had partners who we drank quite a bit together, and that has all fallen away, but just like naturally. It wasn't like, today I'm going to stop, and smoking. I was a big smoker through high school and college. My whole family, they'd have Christmas parties, we're all smoking,
Probably not outside.
And we all have quit since, of course. We've all quit. I remember telling my girlfriend, I was like, when I graduate from college, I'm quitting. And I did. But I think meditation definitely had a part in it. Like, I just started to change my vibration.
Well, that's what it does. The meditation will change your vibration because you're getting in touch with your inner vibration. The one that's sustaining it all. It's sustaining your days of overwhelm. It's sustaining your hard efforts at the race. It's sustaining your moments of sadness. It's sustaining your moments of bliss. There's a foundation in there that is a really high vibration. And when we sit and do nothing, when we literally stop and sit, we begin to get in touch with that. And that's so powerful that it begins to, I remember Philip used this word once, like it has more robustness in your life. And I just love that.
Well, that's, isn't that the challenge, is to be still and quiet with yourself, and the uncomfortableness of the stillness, right? And that study, just to bring up that study.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was listening to a podcast, and I guess in 2014 they did a study, and I'm going to, not have all the details, but we can link to it here. But basically, they put a bunch of people in the room, and they gave them, some people things to think about when they're in the room, and some people who just had to go into the room and sit there. And they got feedback, and I think 50% of them were like, it was all right. It wasn't, whatever. Like, I thought about basketball, or I thought about whatever. And then they took it a step further, and they said, well, we're going to put you in the room now, and we're not going to give you any cues to think about. You're just going to have to sit there quietly, but we're going to put in this electric shock, low-level electric shock opportunity, and you can shock yourself if you choose to, low level. And
which would opt you out of having to sit?
It would just occupy your time from not sitting still quietly with yourself. And most of them chose to give themselves a shock, even though before the study started, when they asked the question, would you want electric shock therapy or no? All of them said no. So when they're in the room by themselves, given the opportunity to sit still and quiet, they would rather still give themselves a low-level shock to occupy their time than to be still with their thoughts.
Yes.
It's pretty powerful.
Yes. Wow. Yeah, it is. It is. How uncomfortable it can be to be with ourselves sometimes. And from personal experience, like my first silent retreat, I was in the middle of nowhere in New York with like 85 people I didn't know. I didn't have my car and no phone. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, what am I doing? And it was the first 24 hours, it was fight or flight in my nervous system. Because it was just like, if I wanted to leave here, I don't know how. And I don't know. It's just the survival instincts. And it was super uncomfortable. And we were meditating together, which was even more uncomfortable. So now I have to close my eyes. It asked me to close my eyes. And there's no other distractions. Okay, maybe if I had what is that called?
The electric shock thing?
What is it? Electric shock? Maybe I would have. I don't know. Something. Okay. No, but yeah, it's uncomfortable at first. And then it took me about 24 hours for my first retreat. And I started to drop in, but when I say drop in, like kind of just drop into my nervous system, felt more calm. And it would, of course, my mind, I would just watch. There was no other distractions. There was no eye contact, no reading, no writing, no phone, no TV, just them guiding us in meditation. And then we would have free time in the afternoon. And that was the toughest time for me because I'm like, what am I going to do? The mind is so trained to do. And that was my first thing. There's nothing to do. And then I started to notice that. And I just noticed by probably like day 2 or 3 that like the present moment started to lead the way. And all of a sudden I just found myself lying on my back in the garden watching butterflies. And having subtle moments of bliss. Like there were only a few seconds in nature with no other distractions, and it was, and then of course the mind would come in like, oh my gosh, that was amazing.
I know. Then you're like, I'm not in. There goes the bliss, right?
As soon as you realize you're in it, it's gone.
Yeah, the moment you realize something happened, I can't articulate it. There's no words for it, but something happened in meditation the other day, and then my mind got a hold of something amazing that was happening, and I was like, and there it goes. And then you watch that need to want to get it back
Quickly.
Yes.
Get it, and then the next meditation, I was like, oh, here's the next meditation. It's just me, and it's just like normal. Where's that cool thing that happened last night where the breath and it's amazing. So let's say somebody is listening to this and they're like, okay, I'm not ready to meditate. Like, I'm just not ready to meditate. What can I do? What can I do? If I'm just got a hard line, like I'm just not ready to sit, for the million excuses that are available to not do that, what can they start to do that would help them in those shifts to having a little more peace and calm?
I would say to clear out maybe one distraction. For example, if those of you listening, if you're a runner, which, many of you I know are, running, if you listen to earbuds or music, try one run a week with no earbud, no music, and feel your feet as you run, or feel the wind on your skin. Of course, that's a moving meditation. And then see how you feel after. It could be walking on your days off, a break day, and you go for a walk and it's just you and nothing else. There's no phone, no music, feeling your feet as you walk. Could start there.
And what happens when it gets really uncomfortable and I have packed my headphones and my phone just in case this uncomfortable moment happened. So instead of grabbing those, if they're like, no, I'm going to stay with it.
Yes, that's the magic moment.
Ooh, so what do we do in the magic moment?
The magic moment, right? And it's like, that's the awareness, that's the consciousness, where it's like, oh, I'm aware of the thought that I need this to be happy right now. And now you have a choice. So just witnessing the thought, you're now aware. So before, you may have been stuck in the thought and impulse right to your hand, to the phone, or whatever it is. So notice the thoughts or impulses, and now you've got a choice. You could, sure, okay, you want to listen to music, then maybe you sit under a tree and listen to the space in between each of the sounds. If that's your goal, if you want to start to really train your mind, you can do it anywhere. You can do it anywhere, in any moment. But it takes patience with yourself. And, I love the term mental hygiene, because we exercise for the body. Of course, we brush our teeth. We do all these things for the body. We take a shower. But then it's the mind, right? How are we bringing alertness? But it's already here, right? It's already here. But the mind, we're training it for distraction when we're out in the world. So how are we going to tune it up? Right? Bob talks about this a lot. We get out of tune. And so to tune up, we come back to this moment now. And it could even be in listening to a song and the space in between the song. And then eventually clear that out and see if you can come back, and you don't need that, because that's what we're going for really eventually, is that you don't need anything.
And just like that message from Yogananda, the cool thing about it is that first moment that you realize, like, oh my gosh, I have a choice to go plug in now. I tried the run, it's 5 minutes in, I just can't do it. But you're recognizing all this noise and everything, and you've got the choice. Well, once you see that you have a choice, like, I just trust the power of being mindful so much, and I trust the power of meditation so much, because I've seen it so many times, including in my own life experience, that if you just keep noticing that choice, whether you put the earbuds in or not, there's going to be a day that you say, you know what, I'm going to stay with it. And then there's going to be a day that you say, well, I'm at my turnaround point on my run, so what if I just sat for 5 minutes? I'll pause my watch. Yes. And then there'll be a day where you go, I'm going to sit for 5 minutes and I'm not going to pause my watch, knowing that it's going to affect my pace, that I'm going to upload to okay, I'm going to go there today. All right, this is very uncomfortable. Yeah. But I just trust that part of us that gains more robustness, the awareness piece, that just start somewhere, because eventually, we're all going to the same place. Like, we're all waking up. Yes. So just start somewhere.
Yes. And as you were saying that, when we do make that choice of, I'm not going to listen to music and I'm just going to run. At the end, that's a celebration, right? It's really important to honor and celebrate the moments when you make that choice for your own mind and body, and soak it in. Because so many times we're like, all right, I didn't listen. Okay, that was great. Now next, I'm in the house and I'm going to make dinner and I'm going to stretch. And there's no pause to recognize that, like, you just made a really powerful decision. And it might not seem that way, but you said to your mind, no, I'm just going to do one thing right now. And that's really hard to do, but you did it. And you did it anyway.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's powerful. The guy in our yoga class this morning, struggling, and then I talked to him afterwards, and he wanted to leave 3 times because he wasn't flexible, wasn't stretching, it was hurting. And thing kept going in his mind of like, just be here now, just this breath, this moment. And he made it through the class. And I was trying to talk to him, but he was trying to diminish the success of it. But you got to celebrate them. Many small wins. Michael Phelps, amazing Olympic swimmer. That's one of the things that he just kept doing. Many small wins every single day. How many small wins and they just stack up and stack up and stack up and stack up. So yeah, there's something to that. Amazing. Thank you, Megan.
That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
I know that there's, a Grand Canyon worth of wisdom in there, and we didn't even begin to scrape the surface. But for those who are listening, who are coming on the Costa Rica retreat, as I said in the intro, Meg is one of the trio. Valerie, who's actually been on the podcast a couple times already, she is also, and we are brewing something else up. We're carrying momentum, and so we're coming together actually Saturday to chat about what's next. So be looking for something. We're feeling something in the fall of 2022. So if you missed out on Costa Rica, stay tuned. Awesome. Thank you, Meg. You're amazing.
Thank you both. I feel like I could talk to you.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Yes,
I know.
so good.
Was it last Saturday? I was like, yeah, I talked to the girls. BJ's like, how long was that? I'm like, I don't know. I think we were on the phone for like 2 hours.
Yeah, we got a lot
We
to talk about.
do. We do. There's only a certain amount of, there's only a few people that I can go that deep with,
Yeah.
So thank you so much for going deep with us. I know the listeners are going to appreciate it. There's definitely some seekers in here that, want more. So thank you so much.
Thank you both.